Hey guys, Landon here with 515hosting.com, and welcome to While It Bakes, where we talk about all things WordPress, web design, web hosting, and search engine optimization while I wait for my pizza to bake. Today, we're going to talk about the approaches to web design and how that relates to how much a website should cost, because I feel like there's a lot of disconnects in the industry when it comes to pricing. And it's important that we discover some transparency in where a lot of these disconnects are rooted. One of the things that I noticed, and one of the reasons that I decided to start offering my services locally and abroad for web design, was because when I reached out to local web designers to help me with some of the tasks I needed to accomplish for my own websites, a lot of them were really pushing just wanting to build an entirely new website. And I was curious why that was. And the more I started digging, the more that I realized that a lot of these web designers weren't really great with development and their abilities to reverse engineer what had already been done. So they weren't comfortable with Gutenberg, the defaults editor for WordPress. They weren't comfortable with other content management systems. They weren't comfortable with page builders that might have been used that they're not familiar with. And what they did know how to do was take a theme off of the internet, upload it, and swap out images and content. And so what you would see a lot of is these local web designers have gone in and bought themes for $60, $100, sometimes even free, and then they sell these websites to small businesses for $1,000, $2,000, because those small businesses are entrusting that they're going to build them a website, but they really don't know the ins and outs of the industry, so they just trust that what they're getting is a custom website that somebody spent hours and hours building. Someone has spent hours and hours building that theme, but not their web designer. And really what these small businesses end up getting is just a theme off of the shelf that they're paying thousands of dollars for that cost the web designer $60 to $100. And that's all that these web designers can do, because they don't know the development side of it, but they do know enough to be able to buy a theme, charge a lot of money for it, and swap out images and text. This has created a disconnect in the industry with what clients are expecting, though. And it goes a couple of different ways. For one, you can run into clients that will look at you and wonder how you can approach their project for $400 when so many other people are quoting them $2,000. And the answer is really that in a lot of cases, you can approach their project by using these themes and be a little more transparent about the fact that it's not going to take you hours and hours and hours to build this website and deliver it to them. And so it is a fair price to charge $500 to $600 for what they want to build. And that these other web designers are just completely predatory in what they're charging. At the other end of it, you have these people that get these quotes at $400, and then you come in there with a quote for $2,000, and now they're confused on why it's going to cost one person $150, $400 to build them a website, and it's going to cost you $2,000 worth of time and labor to build that for them. And again, that comes into sort of this thing of what the expectations for that website are, and being transparent about how that's rooted, because in a lot of cases this other web designer might be promising them a theme or a template and able to do that for $500. And if you're coming in there and saying, well, I'm going to build this website custom for you, I got to do all of this stuff for it, and it's going to be $2,000 worth of work, that's difficult for them to understand. Why? Because to them it's just a website. And to them, a web designer is building these sites, and it's taking them lots of time to build them, and they don't always understand that a lot of times web designers can just copy and paste stuff, right? So you have to understand the transparency in order to understand the approach that's being taken and how that's being applied to what your quote for web design is. And so one of the things that I have also realized is that this has also caused problems in regards to being able to quote changes to a website. Because again, a lot of these web designers are pushing for new websites, because if they can't reverse engineer or understand how a website was built in order to make the changes, the only thing they can really do is push this idea of building something new so that they are familiar with it so they can make changes. So then what you have is situations where a company comes to you and they say, well, this person said they could build a website for $2,000, and you're telling me that it's going to cost $1,500 for you to make these changes to an existing website. And there again, it's just a disconnect of saying, well, yeah, they're going to be able to build you this new website for $2,000 because they're going to grab a theme, they're going to copy and paste some of your content from your site, but it's going to take me this many hours worth of time because I'm going to be using the existing tools that we have available, and I'm not going to be swapping images and text into a new theme, but I'm actually going to be customizing what is there currently. And if you were to make these changes to that website after the fact, it would cost just as much. It's just that they have such a high markup on that new website that they're able to absorb that time to make those changes. That said, that sort of sets the basis of why it's important for you as a customer to understand at a transparent level really what is being charged in your design quote and why they're estimating it's going to take so many hours. If they can't quantify to you really what the details of that are and why their quote is what it is, then that's sort of a worthless estimate, in my opinion. They should be able to look at that and break that down into different components. And a lot of times they can't, and they just sort of throw a number at it because, again, they have a theme. They say, okay, well, this is going to charge me $50 for this theme, but the going rate for websites right now is like $2,500. I'm going to charge $2,500. Business is not going to know any better. And you know what? If it takes me 4 more hours to build this website than what I expect, that's fine because I have such a markup in it. That's the way that a lot of these local web designers are thinking. So what is my approach? Well, my approach is basically just to meet the client's expectations, and then through the breakdown of the estimate and through communicating why that estimate is what it is and what that estimate consists of, we can align that quote, that estimate, with their expectations. So if a client comes to me and they say, I need this website and it has to look like this, this is what my budget is, I'm going to say, well, maybe we just use a theme. And I'm not going to charge that client $2,500 for a theme that only costs me $100 to integrate. I'm going to say we can get this theme for free. It's going to take me a couple hours to swap out some images, but if this meets your expectations, that's great. And you know what, we can adjust things in that theme, we can change colors and such, but if we can meet the client's expectations with a theme and come in at $500 and explain to them why that quote is what it is, then that theme usage is perfectly fine. If a client says, I need to do this with my website and I only have $500, and what they want to do is something completely custom that doesn't look like any other website out there and has all these special features, we might not be able to do that. But we could at least say, if you wanted to do that, it's going to cost this much because we have to build all of this stuff from the ground up. Now, a completely custom website, and I'm talking completely custom, where we're not even using WordPress, would be the furthest extreme. And a matter of fact, that is the case for what a lot of tech companies need from a website. If you think about designing a website specifically for a company, that website is going to incorporate what they need and only what they need. Nothing more and nothing less, because if it's something more than what they need, that's bloat, and if it's something less than what they need, it's not achieving what their expectations are. So at that furthest end, you have completely custom websites that use completely custom code, completely front and back end that's custom and specific to what their employees, what their developers, what their website needs to do. The way that I approach it is explaining it that way, and then in a lot of cases what we find is that somewhere in the middle you have a good balance. With small business websites, a lot of times you can get away with having some of that bloat, right? You have static websites, maybe you have a blog. So WordPress works really great. It's a familiar content management system that people can work with. It's easy to adjust things, and it just makes sense in a lot of cases to use that for a small business website. In some cases, other content management systems works, or maybe a site builder that's part of your web hosting dashboard would make sense. All of these things are perfectly fine, but what I'm getting at is essentially that it's okay to build something that has a strong foundation. It's okay to not to reinvent the wheel. It's okay to use themes. And in that middle area, you have sort of that starting point where we're going to say, okay, we're going to use a theme, because a website at the end of the day has the same structure from site to site. Every website essentially has a header, it has your menu, it has your body content, and then it has your footer. The way in which those things might be positioned, maybe the header is on the left hand side and the content is over on the right, it might vary, but essentially every website has the same general structure. So if you can start with a theme that gets you to that starting structure without having to reinvent the wheel, I think that that's perfectly fine. And that's a way that I approach things a lot of times. I think that's a great value for the client to say, hey, I'm not going to build this thing from the ground up when I can grab this thing that's very similar. Let's just use that as a starting point. So I do that quite a bit, and that's going to cut the amount of time that I need to develop the website significantly. Then what I can do is I can take that starting point and I can start to adjust it. And I can start to say, well, I like this theme with the header on the left, but I want to make that header a little wider. Now we're starting to get into some customization work that's going to start to increase the cost of that development of the theme, but is still in alignment with what the client needs out of the website, and is still in alignment with delivering something that is unlike any other website that's out there, or at least maybe very similar, but is designed specifically for that client and what they're asking for. The other benefit for sort of that middle ground is that a lot of these themes are managed by third-party authors. So if I design a theme for a client, and I design that theme specifically for that client, I then have to ensure that that theme is always up to date for changing circumstances within WordPress. From WordPress 5.8 to 5.9, there might be certain elements of a theme that would break. And if I'm not constantly monitoring those things, I could get into a position where I have all of these different themes built for a client that all need to be updated and changed because something is now not working correctly with them. And that's very labor intensive. However, if you use a starting theme and you sort of adjust that and customize it, in a lot of cases those themes are being constantly monitored by a third-party author, and so when changes need to take effect, they make a change to that theme so that it can be updated and pushed out to all of the clients. And that's why I think that that great middle ground of using a theme and then sort of developing and customizing that theme out so it's bespoke for the client is the greatest position, and it's really where I sort of funnel my attention with how I approach my web design projects. And I think that that is a really fair approach compared to what other individuals are doing. I think that you end up having a better understanding as a client that you're not getting something that was built from the very ground up, and you're also not getting something that looks like every other website out there. And that is the best value I think that I can provide. that said, if you have any differences of opinion, I would love to hear it. Perhaps you are completely opposed to the idea of using themes for custom websites. That's fine. Maybe you have an opinion about situations that you've ran into with web developers or local design agencies pushing websites on you. I'd love to hear about those. Just really curious to hear about what people's thoughts are on different approaches to web design. Now, one thing I did want to point out is I'm not necessarily sure if you can put a finite number on what a website should cost. I want this sort of to be a timeless video in some regards, so if I say it should cost this much money, in 10 years from now that could be outdated and this video would no longer be relevant, and I want there to be some relevance over a period of time. But I think it is important to note that your websites are going to cost what they cost per your market. So if you're in a very large city where tech is very heavy, the going rate for developers is probably going to be pretty high. But if you're in central Iowa like I am, and you're working primarily with small businesses, your rates are probably going to be significantly lower than if you were to work with a large tech company that has full stack developers and all of these things that are really going to push those rates up, because they could charge their rates for custom development and work with other clients instead of you. So they're gonna go ahead and charge what their normal rate is, and then if you can find someone to do that work for a lower price that's in line with what their capabilities are at a lower price, then that web design agency that has more experience or more knowledge about development is going to be fine, because they're just going to charge a different client for using their full range of their knowledge. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. I guess what I'm getting at is, there's not a fixed rate of what a website should cost. It's going to be based upon your market conditions, and it's going to be based upon what the website is and what those expectations you have for that website is, how much time the web designer has to spend on it, and whether or not the web designer can start with a theme that's similar to what you're building, or whether they have to build something from the ground up. So anyways, if you're interested in hearing more about these types of things, learning more about websites, if you're a small business owner that has a website and are curious about future topics that we might cover, go ahead and hit that follow, leave a like, leave a comment, and I think we've got a couple minutes here and my pizza will be done, and chow down. Until next time, have a great weekend.